To start buttonholes on this machine, there are a number of things you have to do. So the first is you have to take your buttons, and I drop this. So I'm doing two different types, and I'll show you these two buttons. So one is this clear type, and you hold it on the scale or any ruler, and then you see how big it is. So what I realized when I did this is it's 12 millimeters. Okay? The second one I have looks remarkably different, but actually when I put it on the scale I found out it's exactly the same. It doesn't look the same when you hold them side by side. The white one looks bigger, but it's an optical illusion, and when you put them over top of each other they are the same size even though they don't look it. So it's also 12. So that made it easy because I only had to worry about one size of buttonhole. The second thing you need to worry about is what type of fabric you're sewing. So in this case, I am going through cotton. Just cotton shirting, there's interfacing. So it's a shirt buttonhole that I'm looking to do. So the buttonhole menu is down here. It's number 3. And if you press the little question mark down here, I'm going to zoom out slightly to see if you can get the whole screen in. Press the question mark and then hold it over that. It says buttonhole for blouses, shirts, and linen. So that's definitely the one I want. The one next to it is very similar, but basic buttonhole for blouses, shirts, and jackets. Also for pillowcases, but since I'm doing a shirt, this one seems to work fine. And then the important bit, and I'll see if I can zoom in on this a little bit down here just to show you what I'm doing. Yeah, that works. This is the buttonhole length. I didn't need to adjust anything else when I was testing this yesterday, so I just set that for 12, which is, if you remember before, 12 millimeters. What I've found, because I'm not using the foot controller on this, just turn it down to sort of the slowest while you're getting used to it, or one up from the slowest. I'll do it in the slowest at the moment. It's good. And then that's ready to go. So up here, let me move the camera up. Up here, this little icon here tells you to use the buttonhole or foot, which I've already got connected, but I'll show you that in a second. And this one says make sure you use interfacing, which the buttonhole placket is already interfaced. So let's take a look at the buttonhole itself. It's got a little plug, like a headphone type plug that goes into a little spot here. Once you know where it is, it's just, you can feel it, so it's actually quite easy to do. And it pops on like all of the Pfaff feet. You just put it on, so I'll show you how that works. So make sure it's in the highest position, just click it in, then feel that little spot, plug it in. The machine will automatically know you've got that plugged in, so it recognizes on the screen that you've done it. So I'll show you what happens. Okay, so when I unplug it, you'll see it says, okay, right, you're doing this using the manual foot, and it shows you this little reverse button. That means you control the length of the buttonhole, but as soon as I plug it in, that goes away, and it knows it's automatic, and you'll see it tells you it's going to sew upwards. So by doing the unplugging that, it's reset everything here, but I put that in my favorites yesterday. And that's ready to go. So let me show you how to line this up now. Okay, so I've got my shirt here that I was started last night, just to make sure all is in good working order. So here's the shirt. I've done 1, 2, 3, 4 buttonholes last night, just to make sure it all works. And I've marked, don't know if you can see that blue dot there, yes you can. So that tells you where the buttonhole is. Now, what's important to remember about this, if you think about it, the buttonhole itself will sew upwards. Do the bar tack across the top, come back down, do the bar tack across the bottom. So you need to really decide where that blue dot, the mark of your buttonhole, is going to be on your buttonhole. I've decided it's going to be on the bottom. So if you imagine like that, it's on the bottom. So what I found is the best way is line up, press that twice so it hovers, the foot hovers, and then put the blue dot in the window where the needle is, and then raise and lower the needle so it's just on the side, this side of it. So what's going to happen is that bar tack will be just below the blue dot, so slightly above where you expect, and I'll show you a close-up of that in a second. I'm just going to lock that down. And now I'll get my zoom camera and I will show you how it looks as I'm lining it up, because there's a few tricky things you need to do to line it up. Right, so this gets quite complicated, but what you can see is I'm using my little mini camera to zoom in on what's going on in here. So I'll try and do this. There we are, that's better. So what you can see is the blue dot is there, and then that red arrow. So pressing the button on the machine to hover it up, you have to watch because the shirt's going to want to escape. What you'll see is this little red arrow has to line up with that notch. Okay. Oop. See, that's the start. That tells it the start of the buttonhole. And then what you'll notice, and we'll try this the other way, it might work better. There's the blue dot. It's a blue dot, and what I want it to be is in that little hole. So I can see it there, and I can see the needle. So what I know from there, that's lined up, the arrow, I can see the blue dot. And then the second bit is, I need to make sure that, I'll try and zoom out a bit, you can see the stitches and the edge of that metal bit. You need to make sure those stitches are parallel, and then that metal bit is lined up exactly. So that tells you the buttonhole will be straight along the stitching. So if I pull out more, it makes it a little easier to see what I mean. So you don't want it like that or like that. You want it to be lined up exactly. So the next part, I'm going to lower this, which I wouldn't normally. So you can see the blue dot there, you can see the needle, everything's lined up. I'm going to lower the foot. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want you to be able to see the blue dot and see where the needle's dropping just in front of it. So what I know is when the stitches happen, it will cover that blue dot, and it's going to be in the perfect place. Now, having played around, this is now not straight, so I'm just going to straighten it up there. And make sure you support the edge of your fabric here while you're doing this. Mine is dangling off the end of this, so it's going to pull, and it could twist if you're not careful. But I'll just raise this up, just make sure this is perfectly straight, and lower it down again. Oop, it's gone crooked again. That's the problem if you let the fabric dangle over the edge, which I have. I wouldn't normally do this like this, but it's just because of the screen on this machine, it's very difficult. So everything's where I want it to be. So one of the things which really surprised me is this button, this needle threader will not work when the buttonhole foot is on. So just be aware that if you use that, thread your machine first, not like me and forget. Okay, then you have to press cut. And then you're ready for your next buttonhole. So, I'll show you, it is actually very easy to do this and quicker when you're not making a video of it. So I've lined up the foot. Looks good. It's in the middle. Press down, press go. Support the shirt so it doesn't pull. Now I can speed this up a bit. I don't like going full tilt with this because if something goes wrong, by the time you can react, you've made a big mess. So cut the thread. Okay, slide it through to the next button hole. Looks in the center. Make sure that's lined up. Looks good. Okay, now comes the worrying part, which is on the collar band. So this one will need to be done from around the top. Okay, and what I mean by that is because the bottom of the buttonhole is going to be near the edge, you need to line it up this way, which means there's a lot of weight pulling backwards on this. Now, what's really important is, of course, you need to make sure it's straight on the collar band and that everything is secured in there. And I do not want this big weight, even though it's not super heavy, dangling at the end. So I will need to bring this around to make sure it's supported and not twisting the buttonhole, because we want that buttonhole to be straight. So I think I will reduce the speed again to the slowest, since this is thick and awkward, and we'll just hope this works. Okay, it's feeding okay thus far. Hooray. This is one of the awkward bits, and anyone who does these kind of buttonholes knows this is one of the places where, because it's very thick, a lot of layers like jeans and stuff, it can go wrong if it doesn't feed perfectly. Okay, so it returned to the bottom, exactly where I started, so that's good. It means it's going to be the correct length. There, it's released it. So I have a buttonhole there, which is good. It's where I want it. And I've done the shirt. Perfect. So I just have 3 more shirts to do that, but let me zoom out. You can see as I got the buttonholes there all in the middle. So nice and easy to do. Just for fun, I thought I'd show you it at a little higher speed. And if you feel really adventurous, let's go up to full speed. Don't know if it'll actually do it at full speed. It might be regulated to do it at slightly slower. Okay, looks good. Off we go. Yeah. I'm not on a very secure table, so it's wobbling a bit, but that's not the machine, that's actually the table. So that's a bit unpleasant to do it that way because it bounces. It doesn't hurt the machine, but it's kind of not the best experience to sew with a vibrating machine. Okay, I was just about to say I really am enjoying using this buttonholer. Worked perfectly. However, I've now encountered the usual situation where this kind of thick edge will prevent the buttonholer from feeding properly. And I've seen this so many times, every time I try and do a pair of jeans, quite often on the collar band itself. So, what's happening is that hump is preventing it from feeding properly. So I'm going to try and see if I can figure out how to make this work better. I'm not sure whether lightening the pressure, maybe. Let's see if we can get this to work. Okay, off we go. So, doing exactly what I did on the first 3 shirts. And it's just stuck. It's not going anywhere. So let's see if I can actually make this work. So, to adjust the foot pressure, you press the thing that looks like a wrench and a screwdriver, and then you've got the help, and it's that one. It says pressure foot pressure, just to use while sewing. So I'm not sure whether we should reduce this or increase it, because sometimes lowering it makes it work better. So it was at 6.5. Let's try 4 and see if that works. Nope. Try 2. Oh, I got over the hump that time. Still a problem right at the end there. So it's not feeding at all now. So let's increase that. Maybe. So the 6.5 is where it started. That is default. Let's try the other direction. Let's go up to 8 and see what happens. So I'm sort of pulling it along to try and help it out here, and then it's just gone. Yeah, I had to force it to work, so that's not, that's the usual problem where the Kenmore, I think, wins. I know there is on the certain types of singers, they have a clamping, which works better, and actually clamps the fabric, so you're not likely to get that problem. However, that's the usual problem I get with this type, but it worked in the end. It's not the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, but I did force it to work, and that's one reason why I don't like to do these at full tilt, because you can't. It'll get a huge buildup of thread, so it's much easier if you can keep the speed down. But anyway, I'm sure these ones will go smoothly now. Let's see if I can find, there it is. Let's see if this, so I've put it back to its default pressure setting, and we'll see if it works this time. No, so it's working again. So that's the usual problem I've got, is those humps. Any hump, and you're stuffed with this type of buttonhole. I've just never figured out how to get it to work. I just basically can't be bothered because the mechanical ones don't have that problem. Anyway, so it's working, but there we go.